Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to trademark a logo. In essence, it's one of the main kind of trademarks that people seem to kind of go after. Typically, it'll be a logo or a symbol. So today we'll go through all of the things you need to know to get started on trademarking your logo. So first and foremost, why is it important to trademark logos? What happens when people start to do trademarking in the first instance is that as a business, they're looking to kind of secure these kind of brands that they use, that they become known for in the marketplace. First and foremost, this typically is the business name. So people will kind of go out there and get their business name locked in. But then after that, what will generally happen is there's an understanding that the name is one thing, but then the visual appeal and the kind of look and feel of the brand is another. So what tends to follow is the registration of key symbols or logos that are associated with these brands, attached to goods and services, which really kind of like are the things that people recognize in the marketplace. So for example, we look at a brand like McDonald's. McDonald's, of course, has the name McDonald's trademarked, but equally important to them is the Golden Arches M logo, which again is possibly more recognizable around the world and immediately at eye appeal. So it's very important for businesses to look to get these symbols and logos trademarked, and it starts to form a kind of part of a larger kind of brand protection, especially around that kind of eye appeal. Okay, so how do we go about registering a kind of logo as a trademark? First things first, you're going to need a few things in hand. Number one is you need to have the logo, which is to be registered. You then need to know what kind of classifications of goods and services you're looking to protect this logo in. And then specifically what we call a trademark specification, which really then drills down in these classifications how the trademark is set to be used. At this stage, it's really about this detail. So for example, with the symbol itself, what you've got designed is obviously what you want to have protected, but it might not be what offers the broadest protection for that symbol. So the trademark application will involve your logo kind of prepared for application. It will involve a specification of what classifications you're looking to protect it in. So each classification is a different set of goods or services, and it will also require a specification which maybe then drills down a bit more into these classes in terms of what you're actually going to be looking to protect, with this brand. So this trademark application is then submitted, and if the logo can function as a trademark, and if it's not opposed by other people who already own trademarks, then within about 4 to 6 months, you'll be granted your logo as a trademark, and then you can kind of continue on from there. It's important to know as well that your protection is backdated from the point it was submitted. So whilst it does take 4 to 6 months to be confirmed, your protection will be kind of in action from the point when you initially submitted it. So that's actually really good. But despite this, there are some kind of issues which come across in all trademark applications, but especially so when you're looking to kind of do more figurative and kind of visual marks, which you need to kind of have in mind when you go to register. And this is often where more kind of like expert advice can come into play. So the first things first, you need to understand whether there are other trademarks that exist that are too similar or identical. These will be likely to result in oppositions. When the trademark's published to kind of advertise it to the general public, people can then oppose your trademark. This can derail your application and potentially stop you from having the mark. So what this tends to require is what we call a professional clearance search, where trademark professionals will kind of look out what's on the register and kind of identify any problems that might arise. Again, with visual marks, this is slightly more complicated rather than word marks, where it might be easy for people to kind of understand what is similar. There's a lot more subjectivity involved when it comes to visual marks, so that's something to kind of bear in mind. Furthermore, you need to understand whether the logo can function as a trademark. This is down to various kind of legal tests that the examiners put the trademark under. Again, trademark experts will know this inside out. They'll know what can and what can't function as a trademark in the kind of visual sense. And yes, the other part that you kind of, there's obviously I've kind of gone a bit on a segue here about the benefit of trademark expert advice. The two other parts here are, you want to ensure that your logo is registered in a way that gives you the broadest possible protection. So the way that your graphic designer might have created your logo is one thing, but the way you might want to register it is another, because perhaps you want to put it in monochrome so that you're going to use lots of different colorways, so you're protecting a broad set of appearances, or maybe it's very specific colors which might require more of a kind of precise approach. And when we're looking at how, registering trademarks and symbols and maybe not having oppositions come in and things of that nature, that precise approach to protecting exactly as much as you can get, but as broad protection as possible, is very, very important. And finally, this obviously comes into relation in terms of what classes you apply for, the commercial kind of boundaries of those classes. Like, are you going to be using it for those classes? Are these classes which you're going to use in the future? So again, it's a fine art, and it's very much worth your time getting the right kind of advice to make sure that this is being registered properly. So just a quick word on why it's important to protect brands in general. So we just talked a little bit before about, having your main business name, for example, trademarked, having your visual appeal trademarked via these kind of symbols and logos. Now, brands are essentially, what we understand them to be essentially is what they call a designation of origin. So the idea is that with brands, if people see your Nike tick on a shirt, or if they see, the Adidas 3 stripes on the trainers, they understand where these goods have come from. And that is the centrifuge of the brand value, which is essentially built into a kind of common idea of the quality of the products and the kind of associated ideas around the brands. So when you're a world-class brand, you'll have several different kind of signs that people will associate with you, which tells them this is where these goods have come from. And as such, I can expect them to be, for example, high quality sporting gear, which is going to be durable, which is going to offer high performance, for example, with the kind of previous examples. So as such, it's very, very important to protect your brands for a couple of reasons. One, you want to stand out in the marketplace, and you want to maintain this level of distinctiveness, so that, for example, with the Nike tick and all of the Nike kind of brand assets, this is something which when people see, it stands out, it's unique, it's appealing, and there's no one else in the market that has a similar kind of look and feel. If those brands weren't as protected and enforced as robustly, Nike would start to see other people appear in the market with kinds of logos or with a name that's kind of close. And slowly but surely, that distinctiveness and that unique appeal starts to kind of dissolve or be diluted by other people who essentially, because the brands haven't been protected, are able to piggyback off the reputation that Nike's built with its kind of brands. So again, it's protecting that distinctiveness in the marketplace, but two, it's kind of creating this psychological domain which is kind of siphoned into these brand assets, which keep people coming back for more and keep people understanding where the goods have come from and what to expect from those goods. And these are the kinds of things that result in lifetime kind of loyalty to brands. And you can probably think of some yourself, which you may yourself be loyal to and keep going back to. So how easy is it to protect your brand? In many ways, it's very easy. In essence, what you're going to want to do is to identify what the most distinctive elements of your brand are. So is it the eye appeal? Is it the logos? Again, typically people start off with the business name and then they follow up with a lot of the visual elements associated with the brand. Again, so a good example, if you think about Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola's got the name, Coca-Cola's got the kind of stylized word, Coca-Cola's got some of the kind of design elements that are on the bottle, including there's like a wave, that's a trademark. Coca-Cola have got, I believe even in many cases, they've got the actual bottle shape. So these are all recognizable things that Coca-Cola look to protect. But businesses really need to understand what it is that gives them that distinctiveness in the marketplace, what it is that their buying audience is recognizing and are attributing their reputation to. So that's step number one, and that's kind of your laundry list of which kind of brand elements you're going to want to look to protect. Step number two is the goods and services that you are going to be kind of looking to cover with that mark. Think about what you do now, think about what you might want to do in the future, because oftentimes at Virtuoso Legal, what we like to do is to speak to the business owner about, you know, that kind of future proofing of the brands, not only understanding, you know, what the brand is for now, but what it might be in the future. And this helps kind of secure business growth moving forward. Thirdly, you're going to want to think about your key markets. So of course, there's an element to which brand protection and kind of protecting your trademarks is all about protecting yourself. But it's also about growth, and it's also about where you're going to want to be. So registering, again, which markets, is it going to be the UK, is it going to be Europe, is it going to be the US, is it going to be other parts of the world? You know, you're not going to want a UK trademark alone if you're selling the most in Australia, for example. So there's that element of where that could be both be where the opportunity is for your business to make more money, but it can also be where the risks are, when perhaps maybe you're experiencing things like counterfeiting or a lot of kind of online infringement. And finally, you're going to want to think about what's a proportionate way to approach your brand protection now and in the future. I mean, a lot of people would love it if they could simply pay X amount of money and have their brands entirely ironclad around the world, you know, for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, for most businesses, even the very, very large businesses, it's more of a case of kind of cutting your cloth to suit your need, and, you know, having a proportionate approach to your brand protection as to where you are making money. Otherwise, this would become prohibitively expensive and very difficult to manage. However, of course, if you are, you know, a massive worldwide business, you may need that full coverage. And again, that's something you're going to really want to speak to experts about, because that is not, you know, a basic operation to achieve. But yes, of course, strong brands and comprehensive protection isn't just about stopping other people from kind of siphoning off your brand. It's also something which really, really helps with commercialization. So commercialization of brands is something which is all about how we make money from having strong brands. And yeah, we'll take a quick look at the ways in which, you know, some of the most kind of famous brands in the world look and kind of make a lot of money from having that strong and kind of comprehensive protection over their brand. So we'll have a quick look at some of the more kind of like prominent ways that people go about commercializing their brands. So number one would be licensing. Licensing is a very, very common practice with very, very strong brands. These are brands that people want to kind of like get hold of, and kind of, you know, you could almost put this brand on anything and someone would buy it. So the example, which is quite famous, at least in the kind of sporting realm, is Manchester United. So Manchester United are obviously a football club in the UK, but in terms of their revenue, they're doing fantastically, because over the course of many, many decades, they've built up an incredible amount of brand reputation in Manchester United as a kind of, you know, products and so on and so forth. So Manchester United, a massive revenue driver for them and for their kind of, you know, which feeds into the club and what they do on the football pitch, is merchandising. So obviously you can get at Manchester United anything. You can get mugs, you know, all sorts of shirts, kind of apparel, you know, you name it, they'll put Manchester United badge on it and they can sell it. And again, a lot of people will buy it worldwide. But interestingly enough, I mean, if you really think about it, do Manchester United produce all of these things? No, they do not. Simply put, they will create their brand is strong enough, it's protected in such a way that they can then license it to producers who will pay Manchester United a kind of percentage of the money that they gain from selling the products. So these are what they call kind of official licensed products, and there are loads of other brands who have that kind of worldwide, you know, irresistible appeal. Brands like Disney, brands like Pokemon, and Star Wars again, who kind of fall under Disney now, of course. They do not produce the goods themselves, which, you know, we see everywhere, but what they do is license their brand, license their sub-brands as well to people that do, who then pay them for the privilege of producing. And that is a fantastic example of how really, really strong, really, really ubiquitous and powerful brands can be massive revenue drivers for businesses. So the next example of commercialization in, which robust brands and comprehensively protected brands are only really capable of is what they call franchising. So franchising operates quite similarly to licensing. However, with a license, in essence, the licensor who grants the license is only really giving people access to the use of certain kind of elements of a brand. Maybe it's the kind of, the characters or the logos or all the other kind of associated material, whereas a franchise is much more kind of fully involved. So this typical example of this will be in things like the service industry, food and drink, and things like transport companies as well. So think of someone like McDonald's. Again, it is something which surprises a lot of people that McDonald's often don't own 99% of their restaurants. What they do is they create franchises which people can buy, which not only give them the entire access to all of the brand use, but also how to kind of do everything in terms of even how long to cook chips, how to make a Big Mac and all this, that and the other, as well as a kind of availability of certain suppliers who could provide everything so that there's a level of consistency. So in franchises it tends to be that each franchisor, so each kind of outlet that kind of pops up, will be able to produce almost an identical output to any other. But again, these franchisors spend a lot of money to buy the license, or the franchise rather, from McDonald's or Burger King or KFC to run one of these shops, because the brand again is so powerful. The idea of the products that they sell are so kind of like enticing that somebody is willing to fork over 40% of revenue just to be able to kind of call themselves KFC. And of course, if anyone calls themselves KFC who isn't a franchisor, or franchisee rather, then they will soon receive a very stern letter from KFC's lawyers. So again, a really strong example of how having a really, really strong brand, one that's protected in a kind of 360 way, again, multiple brands, we're talking about names, we're talking about visual elements, we're talking about symbols, logos. That kind of comprehensiveness of a brand can result in really, really significant revenue for a business. And of course, if you've got a really, really strong brand, you get this opportunity as well to collaborate, which kind of, we see this quite a lot where maybe brands have crossovers and things of that nature. So, the most kind of popular and kind of, appealing brands in the world, as it were, they will always be kind of receiving invitation for kind of commercial opportunities where they might collaborate with others. So think about things like, again, Uniqlo, for example, produce a lot of kind of apparel for people, but they're always doing crossovers with things like, again, Pokemon, Star Wars. So if you think about it that way, this is also a kind of pathway to business growth, as you find that more kind of collaborating with kind of like-minded brands and other businesses is always a great way to kind of propel yourself forward and kind of put yourself in the position where you are also benefiting from others' kind of brand collateral. So all in all, commercialization of IP, again, it tends to be stuff that really helps businesses grow, but it also tends to be stuff that requires you to really, really have that grip on your brand portfolio. And again, as we were talking about before, once you've got the business name out of the way, a lot of it's to do with that visual appeal. It's to do with your logos, symbols, and kind of figurative marks, which really kind of give that look and feel, which ultimately, that's what kind of customers are looking for. The name Nike is one thing, but the tick on shoes or on a hat, or or the slogan "Just Do It" is another thing entirely. So that kind of gravity is only improved when you've got more and more kind of registered. But certainly the logo is a big part of that. Finally, just want to touch upon promotion of brands quickly. So again, we're talking about this idea of fully kind of comprehensively protected and distinct brands. So when we talk about promotion is all about helping the buying public understand that one, you're there, and that two, you produce uniquely distinct and quality goods or services, and three, where to find you again when they need those goods and services once more. So brand protection is a very important part of this, because once you have your kind of brand presence there, you want to make sure that when you are promoting this via your various marketing activities, that this one isn't being eroded by other people coming into the place and essentially benefiting from your marketing spend because they have a brand that's similar, so they get a little bit of residual kind of goodwill as people kind of get confused as to who's who. But equally, you want to make sure that your spend is going to you as well. Insofar as a weaker brand, you're going to be investing in something that's not really holding that goodwill or holding that reputation because you haven't secured those assets. So you need to have a very, very strong kind of presence across several different kind of brand elements. Again, we talk about the name, but we could talk about things like colors, logos, symbols, etc., which really, really give you that kind of foothold of distinctiveness, where once you're pushing your money and your kind of marketing machine behind that, all of that goodwill, all of that reputation is going into these marks that nobody else can get close to. So in terms of marketing activities, as we understand, this can be general company activities, but also things like advertising online, campaigns, kind of building loyalty with existing clients and so on and so forth. Every single pound or dollar that you spend there, you want that to reflect in added goodwill to your brand that increases magnetism over time. So again, don't promote a leaky bucket. You don't want all of that kind of reputation falling out of your brand. You want it to be super strong, and you want it to be a case that nobody else can get close to that and kind of benefit from what you're doing to make people feel good about what you do. In conclusion, looking to kind of trademark the visual elements of a brand is a very, very important step in making sure that you kind of achieve that world-class appeal that the best brands do have. It's something that really safeguards the eye appeal, that thing that catches the eye, whether it's on the shelf or online when people are looking at different services. And it's something which kind of maintains that presence, appeal and magnetism to the buying public. So again, we've seen and we've been through several examples of that, but you can think more yourself in terms of things that you see, and when you see this particular brand, your brain immediately kind of clicks on and says, yes, that's something which if I don't need now, I might grab later. However, of course, it's very important to make sure that you speak to specialists. It doesn't have to be us about this, because for all intents and purposes, it's not just registering of a trademark, it's the creation of an asset which feeds into your kind of brand portfolio or your overall presence, which is fundamental to your commercial success in the future. So do make sure that you speak to people who can really, really help make the best asset for you.